Welcome all of you for the session on hypothesis, types of hypothesis and testing of hypothesis. So basically the word hypothesis can be split into two, where hypo means single and thesis means it's a statement. So hypothesis means it's also termed as a generally held view. So now let us try to understand what is the meaning of hypothesis. A hypothesis is a tentative assumptions made in order to draw out and test its logical or empirical consequences. Assumptions to be approved or disapproved. It is also called as empirical testing. So hypothesis means it's a scientific assumption. It's a tentative statement. It's an accept or reject. It is a causal relationship, proven direction for research. It's a guesswork. It's a presumption. So coming to the types of hypothesis, basically there are so many classification on the types of hypothesis. Very importantly, here we need to understand two types of hypothesis, that is null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis, where null hypothesis is denoted by H naught, where alternative hypothesis is denoted by H1. Null hypothesis means it's a statement of difference. Alternative hypothesis means it's a statement of difference. These two types of hypothesis can be explained by giving an example. Say I'll be making a statement now. See, even though there is a relationship between a family income and expenditure, like if in a family, if there are 5 people staying, all 5 are working, so they'll generate a family income. And obviously when there is an income, there will be an expenditure for their day-to-day activity with regard to their saving. So there is a relationship between, practically speaking, there is a relationship between family income and expenditure. It's a known fact. But what this null hypothesis states is that there is a relationship between family income and family expenditure. So here the null hypothesis states, even though there is a relationship between a family income and a family expenditure, a null hypothesis may state there is no relationship between family income and family expenditure. So that is a statement of no difference. But alternative hypothesis states there is a relationship between family income and family expenditure. And I can also quote another example. Null hypothesis stating like there is a significant relationship between employee and reward system. There is no significant relationship between employee and reward system. So to precise it, the slide, and I can say null hypothesis, there is no statistical significance between the two variables in the statement. That is null hypothesis. There is no difference. Whereas alternative hypothesis, it's like it is a statement of difference. There will be a difference. Okay, once we are clear with the types of hypothesis, that is null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis, let us try to understand what is the procedure we have in testing the hypothesis. So basically hypothesis testing refers to the formal procedure used by the statistician to accept or reject the hypothesis. For testing the hypothesis or test the significance, we use both parametric test and non-parametric test or distribution free test. Hypothesis testing is also called as empirical testing. So here we have 7 steps. So now let us try to understand one by one what is the procedure to test the hypothesis. So the first one is formulate and state the hypothesis. So the first step where the researcher has to do is that he has to formulate and state the hypothesis. State the hypothesis in terms of null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. So null hypothesis would be like smoking leads to cancer. For example, I'm framing a statement, null hypothesis. Smoking leads to cancer. Whereas alternative hypothesis, smoking doesn't lead to cancer. So you can observe here where I'm quoting a statement of null hypothesis, it's a statement of no difference. Whereas alternative hypothesis, it is a statement of difference. So keeping this criteria, let us try to understand what is this null hypothesis once again. So null hypothesis states smoking leads to cancer. It's a non-fact. Alternative hypothesis, smoking doesn't lead to cancer. So this statement has to be validated. So it has to be tested. So to test that, we are following this procedure. First one, where the researcher formulate and state the hypothesis. Once the researcher has formulated and stated the hypothesis, the next step in testing the hypothesis is select the size of the sample. After stating the hypothesis, the researcher has to select the sample size, that is small sample or large sample, that it is less than 30 or equal to 30 or greater than 30. Next, third step is select the appropriate statistical test. When I say statistical test, in research we do have so many types of statistical tests. It can be parametric test or it can be non-parametric test. Under parametric test will be having like Z test, T test, F test. Under non-parametric test we have chi-square, we have ANOVA, Mann-Whitney test, and so many other tests. Once the researcher has selected the appropriate statistical test to test the validity of the statement made by the researcher, the next where the researcher select the desired level of significance. So what is this level of significance? Say for example, in 100% of research, out of 100%, 99% you are very much confident enough about your research work, and 1% it is a sampling error. So this can happen only in pure science. So if you have made some kind of research in medicine where you can take the level of significance as 1%, in social science research we consider the level of significance as just 5%. It is acceptable. So the most common level of significance here we have is 0.5 and 0.1. 0.1 is most needed for pure science, that is medicine, where 99% out of 100%, 1% is error, and 99% you're confident enough on your research work. Whereas in social science research, what happens is that 5% level of significance and 95% level of confidence, it states that 5% there can be some kind of error which is acceptable. So where a researcher has to decide the desired level of significance, and next obtain the table value or critical value. So what this researcher means, he'll obtain the critical value in table concerned with the selected probability distribution for the given level of significance. Next, once a researcher has obtained the table value or critical value, he'll compare that table value with the calculated value. If the calculated value is greater than the table value, the decision here the researcher makes is he'll reject the hypothesis. When the calculated value is less than the table value, the researcher accepts the hypothesis. So once this is clear, once the validity of the hypothesis statement has been tested, where the researcher makes the decision whether to accept the null hypothesis or to reject the alternative hypothesis. So by this I'll be finishing with the introduction part of the hypothesis, the meaning of hypothesis, the various statements giving to understand what is the meaning of hypothesis, what are the types of hypothesis, by giving some examples, live examples we have made, we have attempted to understand the what is the types of hypothesis, what are the various steps involved in testing of the hypothesis. So thank you very much